I'm back. So, this is a new series, and I'm going to be tracking my reading for this vlog. I decided to do more frequent, shorter videos where I will be updating how the reading is going, and I will be updating also for the vlog the fiction that I'm reading, but also the nonfiction academic works that I'm reading. I'm not sure how long this is going to take or whether I will successfully finish reading some of the books for this vlog. We shall see, as I have other obligations as well. But my idea is to just kind of keep some sort of a video diary of the reading progress. And I will also address, of course, the material that I read like I have so far. So it will be probably one of the videos where I will be going into greater details about the books that I am reading at the moment. So for this one, I'll be reading Alba de Cespedes, her side of the story. And then another one, which I'm reading for the essay, is this one, Andrea Dattari, Bread and Roses, Gender and Class Under Capitalism. And so these two books so far, you never know, I might put something else in there. I definitely will, because my essay cannot be based just on one source. So I will be updating on that as well. I will be talking about the writing process, the research of the topic. And if that is something that you would like me to do separately, I can also do that. Let me know in the comments if you're interested to know more about how I read for my academic work and how I actually research a topic. Because right now I am a little bit in that slump where I haven't written anything for a very long time, and I find it difficult to start. So I am kind of avoiding putting down anything until I read enough so I can feel confident to start writing. Yeah, that's about it. That's the slump that I'm in writing wise, but reading wise it's going okay. I also tend to do another thing, which is kind of avoid reading the books that I need for the current tasks that I have, and might start reading books that I might need down the line for something else in my research, for like development of some other chapters for my research. So that's those are the two challenges that I have so far regarding writing. I think that's about it. I will update you again how it's going, and it's probably going to be today. Oh yes, right. Today's Monday, 8th of July, and I will update you probably maybe tonight or tomorrow. We shall see how it goes. Talk soon. Bye. Update time. Is this straight or should I? It should be like this. Yeah, okay, now you're fine. So it's update time. I haven't recorded anything for 3 days, even though I wanted to, but the problem is that this room is rather dark during the day because I have to pull on the blinds as it is the south side of the building, and we are currently in a heat wave and it's so hot outside. So I think that daylight now is okay. And last night I wanted to record as well a video, but by the time I finished with all the chores I had to do, it was already dark. And I'm recording on my laptop, so the camera is not very good for like any kind of extra challenging circumstances, environmentally speaking, like regarding light. So, yeah, here I am. Today is Thursday, 11th of July, and I will do the first update today after reading Alba de Cespedes novel and also Andrea Dattari's nonfiction work on feminism. But last time I didn't mention that Alba de Cespedes' book, Her Side of the Story, was translated by Jill Folston, and there is an afterword by Elena Ferrante. And Andrea Dattari's book is translated by Nathaniel Flakin. Flakin, I guess. So now that is out of the way. What is this? Oh my God. That is out of the way. Where should I start about this? I've taken some notes. I wrote like some kind of a summary that would help me collect my thoughts and be able to better express so far my thoughts on what I've read. And I'll start with the Cespedes. The novel is told in the voice of a young woman called Alessandra, and she is basically telling her life story. I'm not sure whether at the point of writing she's young anymore or how old she is, but she's telling her story, and we are pulled into the dynamic of the family that she grew up in. So we get to know very well her mother in particular, but also her father and the dynamic between the parents. Alessandra is a second child to Ariberto and Eleonora, and the first child that they had was a boy called Alessandro, and he died. He drowned, and that's how actually the novel starts. On the first page, we find out that her mother had passed away, and that she is actually a second child, and that her older brother died by drowning. So I'm going to read this one part here. This is the first page. She says, I considered myself an only child, even though before my birth my brother had come into the world, revealed himself to be a boy wonder, and drowned at the age of 3. There were pictures of him all over the house. Many of them shoved him nearly naked, protected only by a white undersheet sliding off his bare rounded shoulders. In another portrait he was lying on his stomach on a bearskin. My mother's favorite was a small picture in which he was standing, one hand reaching for a piano keyboard. She maintained that had he lived, he would have been a great composer, another Mozart. His name was Alessandro, and when I was born, a few months after his death, I was burdened with the name Alessandra, in order to perpetuate his memory and in the hope that some of the virtues that had left an indelible memory of him would show up in me. This connection with my dead brother was heavy burden during my early childhood years. I could never shake it off, When I was scolded, it was to point out how, despite my name, I'd betrayed the hopes invested in me, not to mention that Alessandra would never have dared act in such a way. Even when I got good grades at school or demonstrated diligence and loyalty, the implication was that half the credit should be given to Alessandro, who was expressing himself through me. This suppression of my personality made me grow up reserved and unsociable, and later mistook as faith in my own gift that was really only my parents' fading memory of Alessandro. I don't know what to say. Like, parents, I'm not a parent and I don't aspire to be one, but reading these kind of novels where, like in Baldwin's novel as well, a relationship between a child and a parent is explored. The first two novels I did for my vlog, The Island by Matute and Three Summers by Liberaki. They also explore the relationship between parents and children and how often parents make these very strange decisions regarding the upbringing of children, and they often don't think about how these decisions will affect the child, or at least not think about it how the child might perceive their parenting decisions. So I find this very interesting. And the first part, I think maybe like 50 pages, we are actually learning a lot about Alessandra and how she struggled with this bestowed memory of her brother that she's supposed to keep intact, and in some way she's supposed to memorialize his existence by good behavior, and she's supposed to be this great child that he never got to be because he died so young. Then after this sort of like exploration of her early childhood, where she has conflicting relation with her parents, or that is her own personality is kind of subdued because of the pressure that she feels, the silent pressure from her parents to be the not the best, but more than the best possible version of herself. We learn more about her relationship with her mother and the kind of life her mother had, and how she married her father. It is silently implied that her father actually tricked her mother into marrying him. We learned that she was only 17 when they got married. I guess at the time this age was quite common for women, for young adults, teenagers. She was a teenager to get married at 17. And we learn how actually her father, she slowly starts discovering her father is a complete scumbag. The friend that she has who lives on the floor above their apartment at one point told her that her father used to wait for her on the stairs of the building to sort of sexually, not sort of, but sexually harass her. She said that he never actually physically did to her, but he was touching her in inappropriate ways, and she didn't have the strength and the courage to kind of make him stop. And we see it is also mentioned, so far I'm on page 166, that her father has had many affairs and that he tends to kind of have this wandering eye. We also learn that her mother is he controls her completely. He is abusive verbally, psychologically, financially. She all the money that she earns from giving lessons, piano lessons, she has to give to him by certain date of the month. And then there is this like explanation of description of the scene where she's handing him the envelope and he's counting the money in front of her, and it's so humiliating. And she asks him a question, is that okay, as in the sense like, the money that I've earned, I haven't taken anything, to make sure that he knows that she hasn't sort of tricked him regarding the amount of money she has given him. I mean, that's just, it was so heartbreaking to read that scene. It really broke me. But one thing that I found kind of hopeful was how she describes the solidarity between women in the building, and especially between younger women, and also how the older women kind of guard their secret of this unity and kind of solidarity that they have to hide from their husbands while they're there. So when the husbands are not there, they kind of unify together and they try to overcome the hardship of oppression. I will read this one part where this is described. It's rather long, but I will not read the whole part. I will just shortly say that she's basically describing a relationship between her mother and another woman in the building named Lydia, who is her mother's best friend, and also a relationship that she developed with Lydia's daughter Fulvia. They didn't betray the young women. She's referring to the older women in the building who actually guarded the secret of these get-togethers. They didn't betray the young women, rather, they helped them if they were members of the same congregation. They were bound by silent and long standing scorn for men's lives, for their cruel and selfish ways, in a repressed bitterness that was handed down from one generation to the next. Every morning when they got up, men would find their coffee ready and their clothes ironed, and they'd walk out into the crisp air, giving no thought to the house or their children. They left behind rooms musty with sleep, unmade beds, and cups stained with milky coffee. They always came home to a specific time, occasionally in small groups like students, having run into each other on the tram or on the Cavour Bridge, and they continued together, chatting. In the summer, they'd fan themselves with their hats. As soon as they came in, they'd ask, "Is supper ready?" taking off their jackets and revealing worn suspenders. "The pasta is overcooked. The rice isn't done yet." And with commands like these, they spread ill humor. Then they'd sit down in the only armchair in the coolest room to read the newspaper. They only ever gleaned news of disasters from their reading. The price of bread is rising, salaries are falling, and they always ended up saying, "We'll have to economize." They never found anything good in the papers. Soon they went out again. You'd hear the door slam behind them just as a minute before or a minute after you'd hear doors slamming on the other floors. They came home when the house was dark, the children asleep, and the day over, spent, finished. Once more, they took off their jackets, sat down by the radio, and listened to political debates. They never had a thing to say to the women, not even how you are feeling, tired, what a pretty dress you're wearing. They never told stories, didn't enjoy conversation or jokes, and hardly ever smiled. When a man spoke to his wife, he'd say, "You all do, you all say," lumping her with the children, his mother in law, the maid, all of them lazy, spendthrift, ungrateful people. And then she talks about further down the storyline, she gets into greater detail about her own understanding of this relationship and how it developed, and how actually her mother and her father in general, or couples in general, are very good at hiding the truth, how marriage works, at least in this era and in Italy. So she she quickly learns that she's been told this lie that women should be very happy. That's like the meaning of their life, to get married and have children. And I found it very funny. I'm going to read this part where her friend Fulvia actually talks to her about how the babies are made. Let me just check which page that is on. 55. One evening, as dusk was falling, she was lying on the plank and I was sitting at her feet. She told me how babies are made. She's talking about the conversation she had with Fulvia. And then she says, between Fulvia's stories and the seances, it was difficult for me to sleep at night when my parents retired to their room and my mother's voice was silent behind the closed door. I felt alone, abandoned to the countless dangers hiding in the shadows and in my own thoughts. In her presence, I made light of my young friend's recent explanations, but they kept me awake and troubled for hours. I rarely went to church to confess, and until then I'd had little awareness of guilt. But suddenly I understood what sin really was, and I felt its misery, as well as its dark and irresistible power. And yet it seemed that only in blind obedience to love could you be persuaded to agree to these acts, perhaps paying for them with your life, like Desdemona or Francesca. Fulvia had said, though, it has nothing to do with love. When I objected, she added, Dario says the same thing, but I couldn't believe it. I worried that she was trying to trick me with her habitual cynicism and indifference. In bed in the dark, my agitated mind would go through the couples I knew, their lives and feelings. It seemed incredible that those men who couldn't spare a single loving word for their companions during the day suddenly expected them to be ready for those dreadful embraces at night. In the morning, the women seemed to carry in their eyes the memory of an exhausting humiliation as they returned to their chores. And for me, this was her realization and criticism as well of how women actually play this game as well, how they participate in patriarchy. Despite being treated unfairly and unkindly, they still go on at night into the bedroom and unfortunately are forced to perform marital duties. And I found, when I read this part, I felt like she was screaming at all these women, asking them to rebel, to kind of not do it, don't go there, don't do that, don't set your life for such misery and disrespect and treatment. Further down the line, we also see how her father is treating her mother. She describes many scenes where he's verbally abusive towards her, where he's calling her different kind of names, derogatory, using derogatory language to put her down and make her feel like she's nothing. And she often refers to the body of her mother, as in like how skinny she is, as if trying to say that because of all this abuse that she's suffering, her body is slowly fading away and disappearing. I found that very powerful. I don't know, I'm thinking every time I read some pages of the book, I'm I have to stop and think about what I read. It's truly heartbreaking, and I think Alba was able to describe this life that so many women have lived and still live in such a powerful way that it you feel like your insides are like twisting and turning, and you want to jump into the story and rescue all of these women, like kind of shout at them to leave, to abandon this life that is exploiting them. And on that note, I felt like Andrea Dattari's Bread and Roses is theoretical book, academic book, but it's very complementary to this novel. And I will just read one part that I think whoever is watching this will understand why I think they're complementary, and they're very good to read at the same time or one after the other. She says, we can observe that women's oppression manifests itself in various ways in all social classes. But the female half of society is not distributed equally among the different classes. Women make up the majority of the exploited and poor of this world, and a tiny, almost non-existent minority of the powerful owners of multinational corporations, who condemn us to exploitation and poverty. It is a categorical fact that while women are slightly more than 50% of the world's population, we make up 70% of the 1.3 billion poor people of the planet. On the other hand, just 1% of the world's private property is in the hands of women. And then she says, hold on a second, if I can find that now, because I didn't mark that part. Yeah, here. She says, we can say that women belong to different social classes that are in conflict with one another. Women do not constitute a separate class, but rather an interclass group. Within this group, exploitation and oppression are combined in different ways. The class to which a person belongs determines the contours of their oppression. For example, laws that restrict a woman's right to control her own body apply equally to all women. But in reality, some women have better access to illegal procedures and are therefore better equipped to deal with possible complications. Some have access to abortion under hygienic conditions due to their economic, social, and educational level. Others bleed to death or die from infections after the operation. They become victims of a patriarchal order with a merciless capitalist visage. That's it. This update is 26 minutes. I really can't do short videos. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. I really apologize. I will try to maybe do 2 or 3 more updates to keep it shorter, because I somehow, whenever it comes to this point where I have to dumb down the material that I'm reading, that is like pick and choose small parts that I'm going to talk about, it's very difficult for me to not include other parts. Also, I find it difficult not to read a page or a page and a half of something that I found interesting or intriguing in order to make a point for the emphasis of the analysis that I am doing. And in that regard, I guess I'm just trying to explain why I am unable to do short videos. I guess if you are looking for something that is extremely short, then that wouldn't be this channel. I have tried and I have failed over and over again, and I'm just gonna stop apologizing for making these videos very long, because I just like to talk about these things. And finally, I'm recording myself and putting this out there in hopes that maybe someone else who also enjoys this kind of analytical approach to reading books will also enjoy this material and maybe leave a comment and start up a discussion of these books or some other books that could be complementary to the reads that I'm doing for each vlog. Yeah, so that's it for today, and then I will give you additional update in, I don't know, day 2, maybe next week, who knows. I'll report. Bye for now. Another update time. Welcome back. I'm here. I'm trying to film when there is a little bit of daylight. Hold on, let me see if this is, because the weather has been going, it's been having existential crisis. The weather doesn't know what it wants: sunshine or rain and sun, or whatever the hell it wants. I don't understand what it wants. So in the room, it gets really, really dark. Oh, I'm recording this just before I go out. I'm going to watch a film tonight about Caravaggio, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. It's a film in Italian, so it's always refreshing to watch a film that is not in English. It is a period-based drama that is not in English. So, update about the books. I will try to keep it brief this time. I said that last time and it didn't work out. I'm almost halfway through her side of the story. And last time I just mentioned that we were kind of pulled into the dynamic of the family. That is the immediate family: mother, father, and daughter. The daughter is the one who's telling the story. So her mother at one point starts teaching piano lessons to this one girl from a wealthy family that comes from UK. And there she ends up meeting the elder brother, I think, and she falls in love with him. And because she's in love with him, she decides that she wants to live a life with him, and she is seeking divorce. However, her husband is not very, doesn't welcome this, and he is trying his best to intimidate her even before the whole ordeal of her trying to ask for a divorce. His abuse of her is escalating slowly, and we see more emotional and financial abuse, like straightforward verbal abuse that is going on. And then she actually decides that she wants to talk to him about this, and kind of do it in an honorable, honest way. However, the whole time I kept screaming at her, like, woman, there is nothing you can do, not in the system that provides systemic tools, institutional tools for your oppression. There's no way that you're going to be able to come out of this situation without any harm if you are seeking it like in this honest and honorable way. And because her husband is refusing to give her a divorce, spoilers. So I guess this whole video is going to be spoilers. She actually commits suicide. I mean, at the beginning, right on the first page, we know that she passed away. We just don't know how. She commits suicide. And then Alessandra, of course, is in this really vulnerable situation after her mother died. As her father, we know how he behaved towards her mother, and Alessandra is the only one who actually knows about the situation inside the family house, like the dynamic and the abuse, and also the woman who works for them, the domestic worker. She also is aware of this, but she's technically left to her own vices, Alessandra, and her father decides to send her off to her grandmother, who lives somewhere in some village in Italy. And I found it, I was quite fearful for her, but she, in this environment that she enters in the village, the new family dynamic emerges, and she kind of regains her own agency there, and she's able to stand up for herself as much as that is possible. The grandmother, that is actually the matriarch of the household, she ends up kind of being there for her and offering her an opportunity, what in grandmother's eyes is to gain strength and live fully and independently. Although, I mean, her grandmother is quite an interesting figure. I found her fascinating on many levels, although her logic of women's position in Italian society is a little bit odd at times. She understands the position that women are in, but she also believes that this sort of subjugated position that the women are in is also something that women should derive their strength from. And at time, like, she has this one whole monologue where she explains to Alessandra why she should actually give up her studies, not read any books, not be cultured anymore. She believes that this is actually what harms women more than it helps them, education. And she thinks that through the body that women possess, through the power of creating children, that's where the strength of women lies. And there are several parts in the book where they're having these like interesting conversations on this topic. And Alessandra also develops a very close relationship with one of her uncles. Another uncle that is also present there, he kind of is sexually objectifying her at one point. It becomes so obvious that her grandmother is she silently told her to lock her door at night when she goes to bed. I guess they all knew what might happen. And the worst thing of all is the silence of the women around these topics. And she talks a lot about that. She addresses in particular the issue of how women, they have this knowledge, they possess the knowledge, but they don't share it, about the oppression, about their position, about what men might do, how they might weave the whip of oppression at them. And at one point, the uncle that she grows close to, it's sort of like a platonic love, but at some point she also is developing some kind of erotic fascination with him. And I was like, that's a little bit, I mean, I don't know what Alba was trying to get at. I think maybe she was trying to explore the thin line between a love for someone that you might admire, who might be your familiar relations or not, someone that is way older than you and is guiding you through some difficult time, and how you might actually be on the verge of crossing into this erotic relationship with that person, although that might be inappropriate. In this case, it's her uncle. While the other uncle, like right from the start, she kind of declares her, I wouldn't say disgust, but like dislike of him. So in that sense, he's not as appealing. At this particular moment where I've stopped reading, she is returning back to Rome. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen after she returns. And one thing I forgot to mention is, I did mention, I think, in the first clip, that this narration, well, at least part of it, this part where her mother is going on a journey of self-discovery through developing love for another man, and her choosing to die, and then she is moving to a village to live with her grandmother and the rest of the family from her father's side. She's actually, this whole period is happening in 1939, and as she is during the time that she is in the village, the war is announced on the radio. So we see, there is also some talk of it, although not as much. Mostly the talk is about sending men to war and mothers who have birthed children, and how now their children might going to die for the country that they live in. So I think maybe in this part that is coming right after, upon her return to Rome, Alba will explore more of this topic. So on the other hand, I haven't progressed much with Tatari's book because I had other obligations and I'm a slow reader. So reading theoretic work can be sometimes challenging for me, because I really need to take it even slower than I would when I'm reading fiction. I will have to say that so far she's doing like an overview, historic overview of women's struggle for equality. And she's focused heavily on France and England, but she's talking about this division in the struggle between the bourgeois feminists and the socialist feminists. She actually analyzes this very well, and she kind of defines the difference between these two struggles very well. And she also expressed the difference between two strands of socialist feminist movements in the 19th century. One of them was more willing to kind of collaborate with the capitalist system for the emancipation of women, while the other one was revolutionary in nature and understood that is women's equality will not be achieved through this negotiation and compromise within the system, but rather as a struggle and revolution against the capitalist system. At the moment, I am on page 49, and this half of this chapter that I'm reading now, it's called Between Philanthropy and Revolution, is dedicated to a woman called Flora Tristan. She is actually mixed origin, and her whole identity is centered around the fact that her parents their marriage was not legitimized, and hence she was a bastard child. So her whole struggle in life comes from that legal aspect of her not being seen in the eyes of law as a legitimate child of her parents. And then also when she gets married finally in adulthood, she's experiencing extreme hardship because her husband is abusive, and at the time the French law did not allow for divorce unless a man brought a lover into the home. So we see this kind of her revolutionary spirit and her struggle developing from this personal experience that she had. And I find her quite fascinating figure. I've never heard of her before. And for my essay that I'm doing, I think I'm going to write also about her. And yeah, that's it. Oh my, 15 minutes again. Oh God. So yeah, that's it for now. I'll report in the next vlog, and I think with that I will close. And I'm not sure. I think that's going to be probably in a couple of days, as I have other things to do. I'm not really sure how much of the day I will be able to dedicate to reading Alba de Cespedes, but otherwise I will report. So yeah, see you in the next part of this vlog.